Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to right now. On this Thoughtful Thursday, I want to talk about a conversation I had with a person who actually came up to me and said that they were re-listening to a show that we had done about leadership theories probably more than a year ago now. And one of the parts of this episode about servant leadership really resonated with them, and they kind of took it back and used it in their own day-to-day leadership life. And it made me think about the number of times when I will hear something that and I inherently go like, nope, that's not it, or I'll hear something and go, ooh, that hits something differently, like it kind of sticks in my head a little bit, and then what happens next? Right? Like why did I shrug it off, or why did I decide to go further into it in my own head or bring it with me? And so I want to ask you about, Lorenzo, is this idea of taking leadership theories and actually applying them versus just going, oh, that sounds nice, and then you go about your day to day. Kind of being intentional about it versus letting it happen. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know we've talked many times about kind of the idea of the application of theory. There's so many great books and podcasts and blogs and articles and thought leaders. There's so many great things that are out there in a ton of content that we all consume. But to your point, like I think about the idea of you hearing something and being like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Or what I appreciate about reading a lot about leadership theory is like people are able to put together the words of an idea that maybe I've had, or a feeling that I've had, or a thought that I've had, but I've not been able to really communicate it very well. And I hear something and I'm like, oh, that's it. Like that exactly, frames up what I was thinking. And now it gives me an opportunity to communicate that idea a lot easier or a lot cleaner when I'm having conversations about it. So I love this dialogue. I think it's really important to talk about and consider. A matter of fact, the other day I was having a conversation with someone, shout out to Lindsay, in leadership theory, just really going deep into some of these ideas and saying like, well, how does this apply? Like what does this look like on your day-to-day basis? If you were to say that, in the example you said about servant leadership, okay, I want to be a servant leader, or I feel like I'm a servant leader. Okay, but what does that actually mean? What does that look like on your day-to-day? How are you bringing that to life for your people? What's the conversations that you are having? How are you validating that you're working in a place of service as a leader versus just saying like, well, I tell my people all the time, if you need me, I'm here for you. Or, I work for you, so I'm a servant leader. Like, what are you actually doing? And I think that conversation and that time to reflect and consider is so important.
I like that you use my example here, because what they specifically said to me was around servant leadership was this idea that it was the difference between owning the actions versus putting it on somebody else. And so when it comes to this person being a servant leader, it wasn't just saying I'm a servant leader, therefore I do what my people need from me, they get what they need. It's like, no, it's not just about that. I have to be able to actually say or write down or put into words, these are the things that I do, and then actually go to my people and validate that this is what that means to them, that they understand that I'm doing this for them, and if it's not hitting the right way, or if they don't even see that I'm doing it, that means I'm doing it the wrong way, and I might be telling myself, oh, I'm a servant leader because I do this and this and this, but it's not just about can you articulate it and this is what I'm doing day to day, but is it working? Is it actually doing, is it accomplishing what you want to accomplish by doing it? And I think that can be difficult for a lot of leaders, because one, if they believe that they're going about doing something in the best way, it's the way they know how to do it. And it could be scary to try to validate if it's actually landing the right way, because if it's not landing the right way, it means you got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. You got to figure out, okay, how do I do this differently? And that might mean changing up the kind of either one, the entire theory you're using altogether, or two, actually having to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I thought I was this, but I'm not this. I'm a different kind of leader. And so what I want to ask you, Lorenzo, is, has there been a time recently when you heard a theory or something about leadership where you hadn't tried it before, you hadn't done it before, but it resonated with you so much that you decided, you know what, I'm going to try this the next time that I have the opportunity to, and then you actually were able to kind of recall it in the moment and use it and apply it, and it worked. So I want to ask you that, but first I want to give it up for one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, when was the last time you heard something new when it comes to leadership theory that you hadn't tried before? It was new and it was interesting, and you thought, you know what, this sounds like it would be a good thing, and you actually tried it.
There's a couple of examples that come to mind right away. One of them being The Infinite Game, book by Simon Sinek. And just kind of this idea of, if you are hyper-focused on kind of the why of what you're doing, and you have passion and you have an intrinsic motivation that is bigger than just wanting to win, that will drive you through a lot of different things. And what it helped me to put into a kind of words is around like kind of career progression, and specifically in leadership and people leadership. Because if you raise your hand and say you want to lead people and you want to be responsible for leading people, then for me, there's no like title, there's no ceiling to that. There's no ability to like you can build skill and competence over time to lead an individual, then lead a small group of people through influence, then be directly accountable for leading people, then be a leader of leaders, then be a leader of team leaders. Like there's no ceiling to that for me. If you truly are motivated by wanting to get better at positively influencing people and helping people achieve their goals. And then I think that has helped me, because I've had conversations with leaders and people that have been like, I've been wanting to get this job for 3 or 4 or 5 years. I've always wanted to be this at this company. And I've always had struggle to say, like, well, why that? Like, why just that? Why stop there? Like, why all this effort, this time, this passion, this commitment to get to this title? It didn't make sense to me, and I never had the words to help to explain, like, well, that's just a mile marker on a journey, and it's not a milestone. Like, you can see the marker, you can see that you've made it, you can celebrate that you're here now, but where are you continuing to go, and how are you building upon the work that you've done? And so that theory was really helpful for me as I had conversations with people and leaders who got into roles and kind of felt like, okay, I've made it. And I've like, you've made it where? Like you've just made it here for now, which is great. Celebrate that, do this work, do this job. But you should always be considering the fact that this is just another stop of responsibility on your longer journey of career progression and growth.
Right. Well, and quite honestly, the things that they were doing that got them there are likely the things they'll continue to have to do in order to get to whatever that next step is anyway. And so like the idea of rethinking everything they're doing, it's like, oh, I got this promotion. Now I got to act differently. I got to be different. You know, I mean, unless you're talking about moving into your very first leadership role, which absolutely does redefine what your responsibilities are. Once you're leading people, the way that you lead people might change based on what your people need from you, but your ability to kind of meet your people where they are, your ability to kind of to help them progress and to help them accomplish their goals, that's not going to change no matter what level of leadership you're at. If you view that as your core responsibility, then there's no end to what you can accomplish or what position you can move into. Whereas if you think about, okay, now I'm leading a team of leaders and I just got promoted and now I'm leading a team of maybe senior leaders. Now I gotta really rethink how I'm doing this job because I'm different now. It's like, no, not really. The things that got you to where you are, keep doing them. So yes, celebrate the win for sure, but keep doing exactly what you did. It doesn't change anything besides the different processes you have to learn, but when it comes to the people piece of it, it's likely no different.
Mm-hmm, exactly. No, I think it's that's kind of the idea, is like continue on what you're doing. Don't believe that just because you made it to this spot that there's not another level or there's not refinement or there's not growth, there's not understanding. And yeah, you go, it's really interesting because you typically go from like leading an individual or a small team to then leading a larger team, to then leading leaders of a team, to then leading only a few leaders of very, very large teams. And so like this scaling idea, to your point, there's a core value structure of who you are and what you're doing for the people that you lead. But that audience, may be initially directly, a lot of people. And then it becomes directly only a couple of people, but their influence is over a lot more people. So like you have, these core things that you have to stick with. But again, the idea here is that you're considering in a theory like the infinite game, what is the kind of core of that idea here, and then what does that look like for me in my day-to-day job, and how can I now apply this to what I'm doing to bring this theory to life?
Yeah, I think that's true. It's interesting because there are things that I've heard where I immediately dismiss, and I think, no, that doesn't sound right to me. But yet it's coming from someone who has sold hundreds of thousands or millions of books, or they have a huge following on a certain platform or whatever. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means that it might not resonate with me in what I know about my list of skills and abilities are and how I lead people. Trying to, kind of shoehorn myself into that way of doing things won't work. And I know that for me. And so I quickly dismiss it and I move on. When I dismiss it, it's not that they're wrong. It's that it's wrong for me. And somebody else who is, has an equal number of followers or recognition in the leadership space, I might hear them talk about something and think, ooh, that really sounds right to me. Again, this is about what do you know about yourself intrinsically as a leader, and how do you apply these things that you're learning, as opposed to just saying, that sounds really nice, and then you move on with exactly what you were doing before, which might even already be that thing. And kind of helping you to articulate it to yourself and recognizing in the moment that this is what I'm doing when I lead people, that can help you either A, replicate the positives, or B, kind of refine it or explain it to somebody else when you're helping them grow and develop in their own career.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.